And so we're live on YouTube. Let me just get myself on LinkedIn. Today we got late. I'll tell you the reason why. News flash. It is not that intelligent. There we go. And yes, done. Live on LinkedIn, live on YouTube, sending people a message on WhatsApp, right? I wonder if I should send people a WhatsApp. One of my articles goes viral. Then I do this thinker's frequency. Whatever people I end up inviting, they leave. 194th episode. So I gain popularity by my articles and lose it on thinker's frequency, right? Doesn't sound like a winning formula to me, but maybe there's a twist to it I'm not seeing. So there we go. Live on YouTube, live on LinkedIn. My audio is good. So yeah, good audio. They leave. Good audio everywhere. Let's begin. The show that we deserve. The show that we deserve. The show that we deserve. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum bum bum. Good morning, says Mr. William Davis. Good morning, Mr. Davis. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. And not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis that don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Let's go, folks. But before we go, we gotta follow tradition, right? You know the tradition. You know the sweet and sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll all sip something together and it'll bring us good luck, as it always does, without fail, every day. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup or mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice, a stein, a canteen jug, a flask, or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. I like some hot water with black pepper in it. And here we go. Ah, my God. So beautiful. Let's do it again. So wonderful. So wonderful. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that you are not alone. It says that we are in this together. Which is such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin. Mr. William Davis writes, first 20 minutes of yesterday's lives were very insightful. I went into the Flipkart rabbit hole. I wonder if it's possible to continue this at least twice a week. Well, Mr. Davis, I'd love to. I would have loved to. But you know, despite our best efforts, this has proven to be kind of a flop show, right? I mean, breaks my heart to say it. I invested a lot of effort into it. I thought it's gonna be something, right? But it didn't work out. It didn't work out at all. As I said, it's a way for me to actually lose people, you know. And I've discussed that many times. So I don't think it's a good idea for me to continue this. A very good reason for me to do this was to fix my routine, which has already gotten fixed. I have, you know, I'm waking up early, even without alarms. I get up early. I read. My reading has gotten set at least 1.5, 2 hours a day. So the next 1.5 hours, which go into setting the program up, that's not for me. I mean, I enjoy doing it, but if it's not yielding anything, I don't need to do it anymore, right? So I'm very happy. That's my point, even without the show. So if the show would have worked, like if we would have had hundreds of people live every day, that would have been beautiful, right? I would have continued it every day, right? I have been doing this almost without break for about 200 days, right? Every day, 7 days a week. So barring a few days, I haven't taken a break at all. But now it doesn't make any sense because it didn't work. And sometimes things work, sometimes don't. They don't. And this was one of the times they didn't. Actually, if you think about it, we talk about predicting, we talk about modeling, we talk about intelligence as a measure of being able to predict the future, right? If we would have been very logical about predicting the outcome of thinker's frequency, we would have realized that it will not work, right? Because linear program in the beginning of the day, 8 o'clock, 8:30, 8:20, whatever, we've been 8 o'clock, 8:10 almost always, right? Heavy, extremely heavy discussions, no short kind of a feedback. Hey guys, not that kind of material. Very conversational, very tricky to understand, deep conversations. This was not supposed to work logically, right? Logically, you should make shorts which are extremely well edited, cut, so that people can absorb information in, let's say, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever. This was a heavy, deep commitment on the part of the users as well, or consumers as well, right? That they've got to wake up early, have a routine, and so on and so forth. Even if they're not watching live, they have to do it every day. And that's how they grow. And that's how we've grown a lot, right? But it wasn't supposed to work, you know. But why I did it again was because there's often a difference in what you want to do and what the world wants. There's often a difference between what the world wants and what you really want to do, right? And this is what I want to do. Wanted to do, and I thought it's gonna work, or it has some chance of working, but not at my level. I'm not that popular yet that I can get people to watch me live. A lot of people. Mr. Sumanth Kumar says it's hugely beneficial for me. Well, same here, Mr. Kumar. And you've been such a support. You've been such a kind patron. You've actually put in money, like a substantial amount of money, to keep the show running, to appreciate the show. And I'm, hand to heart, I'm extremely, extremely touched and flattered. And I'm sorry that we won't be able to meet every morning. But, we are friends, so we'll keep in touch. But yeah, anyway, let's move on, folks. You know what happened? Elon Musk, Mr. Musk is going to be the $600 billion man. So he's going to be worth $600 billion, right? Because of SpaceX going public at an $800 billion valuation. And he has a lot of that stake. So he's going to be the $600 billion. Do you know what? Mr. Bill Gates, if he hadn't listened to Mr. Warren Buffett, and if he had just kept his Microsoft stake, okay, and not listened to Mr. Warren Buffett and whatever, and he would have just stayed with the stock, he would have been a trillionaire, and way over being a trillionaire. So Mr. Bill Gates, as he diversified outside Microsoft, he essentially started losing money by tons. So even after the separation with Miss Melinda Gates, he would have been a trillionaire, right? So what does this tell us? This tells us that we've got to be very careful about who our friends are. Ah, bad circle of friends and you lose a lot of money. In this case, Mr. Bill Gates lost a lot of money because of Warren Buffett. So choose your friends wisely, folks. Anyway, let's move on. There's a lot of action happening as far as OpenAI is considered. People have come out with the realization that if SoftBank doesn't provide the $30 billion investment as promised, OpenAI is essentially going to die, right? But obviously, SoftBank is going to invest. SoftBank was supposed to invest after some revenue checks and milestones. Those haven't been met yet. Those haven't been, let's say, climbed yet. But still, SoftBank is going to go ahead with its investment, because if it doesn't, everything goes to toast, right? Very, very interesting. Let's see what happens. Oracle still in trouble. Global economy still pretty shaky. Japan's yields up. Japan's interest rates 30-year high. US, everybody basically quantitative easing happening. Japan, quantitative tightening happening. The carry trade is going to be complicated when people used to borrow from Japan, right? Invest outside, return to Japan. That's not going to work out. When that's not going to work out, the global economy will see some shocks, right? Most of them will be balanced by the quantitative easing from US, but that is to be seen, right? Then comes India, of course. India is facing a lot of currency drawdown. 91 rupees per dollar, worst performing currency in the Asian market. A very, very complicated situation. We don't export as much, so this is clearly not good for India. Maybe they are basically looking at the inflation rate and thinking that they can skirt it over, because inflation is about 2.4, 2.2, which is pretty good, which is pretty much in the range. So they can let the rupee slide and inflation go up, because it doesn't matter, right? Inflation is so low, the growth is going to be huge. But this drawdown, this FPI sell off and everything, that has led to the indexes having performed poorly and the equity participation going low. People are not investing in stocks as they used to. The retail participation and even the fund participation has gone down a little, which essentially is the stark reminder of how cyclical everything is, right? People were getting out of their FDs and investing in equities because the returns were so spectacular. That's not going to happen anymore, because equities have started looking a little, especially the small caps, mid caps, they're looking a little bleak. So a lot of money, I believe, is going to come back to FDs, right? Because that's how it is. Indian stocks look a little weird. However, despite Indian stocks looking a little weaker on the wicket, what's happening with the economic growth is fabulous. Mr. Natarajan Neelkant Mishra, he's an economist from Axis. He has said that India could be looking at a 7.5, 7.6 growth rate, the real GDP, because inflation is very low. So the GDP play is going to be huge. India looks like a very solid economy. You know what, folks? Years ago, Bain had come out with a report in 2021 or 22 saying that India's GDP per capita by 2030 would be $5,500, which essentially meant that India's GDP per capita would have been growing at over 11% CAGR from 2022 to 2030 straight. And I had called bullshit on that report. And I had written a huge article saying that this 11% growth that they're assuming is bonkers. They should be ashamed of themselves. They are drunken monkeys. I had used very acerbic language, which I'm basically proud of. But yeah, it's 2026 now, going to be. And we are at $2.8 thousand, right? 4 years remaining. My estimate of $4,500 of per capita income by 2030 will be bang on, and the Bain guys will be wrong, right? Which essentially means that you should never listen to these forecasters who are basically drawing 10-year projections, they don't know shit, man. They don't know shit. So most of those views are just fugazi. A few comments. Mr. Pulkit Mittal says, your view on silver. My view on silver. I have been talking about how metals are great at this moment of time, right? World economy is very, very fragile. The AI investment boom has a lot of weaknesses, clearly, as you can see, right? And all it needs is just one linchpin away, one linchpin to fall, right? So if this linchpin falls, everything goes down. People say that AI is like electricity. Well, that may be true. Internet was great as well. But if you remember, Amazon took 7-8 years to come back to the stock highs that were achieved in 2000, in 2000. So at the peak, Amazon stock was $130 or something, I don't remember, but it fell about 90%, and it took 7-8 years to come back to where it was. Cisco has just come back to its 1999 highs. It took 20 years, right? Hodl. So that's what happens. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of economic value away. And then, of course, things come back. But whenever that happens, people holding equities are essentially holding dirt. So it makes sense to hedge yourself. And a very good way to hedge yourself is gold, and by extension silver. But silver not so much, because silver is pretty volatile, and the way it has grown is in many ways unsustainable, right? However, gold is the default store of value, and that is a very, very good way to go about things. So silver and gold both are good, but silver has a slightly higher risk quotient, right, which is a little bit of a problem. However, if the economy falls by 30-40%, it'll be the gold that stays. And the beauty is that if you look at the gold chart, it starts falling when the economy has sort of stabilized. So if after the peak, right, when the fall comes, and that fall craters out, that's when gold starts to fall. So that's what happened in 2008. I'm not saying that's what's gonna happen again, but that has historically always happened. Not a chart looking guy. I'm not a pattern matching machine. I look at things from first principles. So the first principle is that if the economy is peaking, right, it's bubbling, right, people start holding up on gold because they feel scared what happens tomorrow. So once they start holding up on gold, gold goes up, right, and then the bubble goes down, right, the bubble pops. It pops like this, right. When it pops like this, people don't start selling gold because they don't know how low things can get, right. And once things have sort of cratered down, that's when people start exiting their gold positions and start investing in equities back again. So gold becomes a very predictable, very nice hedge against instability, because it allows people to keep their money till the time things have cratered down in the actual financial market. So that is the beauty of gold. That has historically happened and also works as from a first principle perspective, right? So that is my view, Mr. Pulkit Mittal. Not related. Mr. Class Apart, Mr. Barun Sharma says, I work at Bain and I would love to see you being right. I am right. I have been. So there is no way that those guys are going to be right. So for 2,800, from $2,800 to $5,000, right? $5,500, effectively double. If we are to double our per capita income in what, 4 years, 4 to 5 years, right? We'll have to grow at what? 12 to 13% CAGR. So there's no way that they're going to be right. No way. Absolutely no way. However, if India starts growing at about 8%, right? My estimate of 4,500 will be okay. So let's do the clear math, okay? If we are at $2,800 right now, grow it by 10%, right? That's 280 again, $300, let's say. So you get somewhere around $3,100, 3,000, right? It's gonna be 3,050, 3,000, 3,000. That's 2026 by the end of it. 2027, it's gonna be 3,300, 3,200, something of that sort, right? 3,250. That's 2028, right? Then 3,200, again, you add about 300, 250. That's 3,500, 3,600, right? 2028, 3,800, 4,200. Exactly what my prediction was. So those guys got money for preparing that bullshit report, and when I read that report, I was actually driving. I was like, this is bullshit. And in the traffic, I did that paper napkin math, right? And I posted that article and I gave an open challenge to those guys that whoever wrote this report, I'm willing to have a debate with that guy. What was the basis of your, report? Who did the math? Who did the math? Who was the quantitative? Right? Of course. And they should be fired, man. I mean, they won't be. That's cool. Silver is volatile, instant rise and instant fall, says Mr. Barun Sharma. So that's what's happening. Let's move forward, folks. Good macro view, I guess. I guess you're happy. We have some people today. You know what? When we get people at Thinkers Frequency, when I write an article and it goes up, right? That's when I start getting a lot of people on Thinkers Frequency. And then it sort of craters out. Anyway, folks. Domestic firms may chip in for the iPhone. So obviously, and I know, and we know that Indian electronics manufacturing play rests on Apple's endeavors in India. Apple and Samsung have been the tent poles of the Indian manufacturing story, the semiconductor manufacturing story. One second. And now they are looking at localizing of some components, because even though we do a lot of manufacturing, it's what Mr. Ajay Chaudhary says as screwdriver technology, right? It's basically assembling of it. Now, a lot of people are bidding for Apple's core component manufacturing play. Apple in talks with CG Semi. CG Semi is a Murugappa group company. They want to have a screen component manufacturer, so screen circuits and so on and so forth. This is going to be very, very good. Apple and Samsung have practically built India's manufacturing prowess. This was a very, very good idea, right? This reminds us of another authority who said something against the whole Indian manufacturing ideas, right? He said that Indian manufacturing is a very bad idea. India should not be focusing on manufacturing. India should be focusing on its strengths, which are services. Manufacturing will be a bad idea for India because it will be way, way behind when it comes to everybody in terms of the generation of product it manufactures. Also, it's a lost effort, he said. And that person was Mr. Raghuram Rajan. He also turned out to be absolutely and unequivocally wrong. It was such a dumb statement of him, to have made that. It's just unbelievable how that person is even surviving in this world, right? Just imagine somebody saying that India should focus on services in the era of AI, right? When the whole IT services industry is looking so fragile and there is no way for India's youth to get engaged without a robust manufacturing sector. So manufacturing leads to a lot of second order effects, and those second order effects really, really push everything up. It's like a giant tide which lifts all boats, right? And glad we didn't listen to his advice. In fact, I think either of the two cases, like it's either dumb, right, or it's conflicted. What can it be when it comes to Mr. Raghuram Rajan? He cannot be obviously dumb, right? He's he's high pedigree guys, IIT, then US, and then World Bank, and whatever his credentials are. So it cannot be dumb, right? That means it's conflicted, which is very, very bad. So that's what's going on, folks. Great, great progress. Tata Electronics upcoming fab, OSAT units, semiconductor burgeoning. Intel and Tata Electronics signed agreements. A lot of action when it comes to manufacturing. Finally, it's beginning. It's still a long way to go, right? as Mr. Ajay Chaudhary said, Ajay Chaudhary, the founder of HCL, very very good person, great energy. It's just watch his interviews and you'll learn so much, right? So he says we really need a robust manufacturing sector because HCL was very bullish on manufacturing. They manufactured laptops and so on and so forth, computers, right? So great news for the country that we are being able to start manufacturing. Although right now it's just China 1, right? India 0 because most of the core components are rerouted from those places. Anyway, moving on, folks. Vedanta demerger has gotten the NCLT approval, folks. You know about Vedanta's demerger. We've talked about this. We've talked about this enough. Vedanta had a debt trouble, serious debt trouble, right? And it had payments coming in, the installments to be paid very in the near future, like 2025, 2026, and so on and so forth. And that basically was hurting the company in very different ways. And a lot of solutions to those problems, right? Some of those solutions that those guys tried were like they took dividends out of the company to pay back the debt, but you can't do that. Why? Because HZL had government shareholding, right? So taking dividends out of that was a conflict of interest for the governments and so on and so forth. So government essentially came in the way for Vedanta to get dividends out of their core companies to fight the debt problem. So they couldn't really do that up to a point, beyond a point. So one of the ways they were trying to do that was that they were demerging their companies, right, and listing them separately. What happens when you demerge your companies and list them separately is that they get better access of capital which is specific to their operation, and that sort of leads you, and you sell a little bit of part, right, when they go public, of course. That capital you use to pay debt and so on and so forth, and then you try to refinance your debt and so on. So that is very well done. And even though Vedanta faced a lot of trouble from Viceroy, if you remember, Viceroy was the short seller like Hindenburg who came in the way of Vedanta's demerging exercise. They shorted them and they published a report. Nobody gave a shit about that report. That report turned out to be a damn squib, right? But finally, NCLT approval. Vedanta Aluminium Metal, Talwandi Sabo Power, Malco Energy, and Vedanta Iron and Steel from the flagship Vedanta Group. So this is historic in many ways, and now they're successful. Somebody comments, Mr. Cloning Investing, rule of 72 and power of compounding should be taught to kids. Yeah, you know what? There is a policeman in Lucknow who was caught. He had a very big Haveli, beautiful. It was like a palace, essentially, he had made. And he had like about 30-40 kilograms of gold and some 50 kilograms of silver, hundreds of crores of cash. You know how he did that? He did that with financial discipline and compounding. So definitely compounding should be done, should be taught to kids. It's very necessary. I agree. I agree. The power of compounding. Learn that from Indian babus, right? Indian bureaucrats. Look at their cash hoards, and that is power of compounding, folks. Moving on. Returns uncertain. Investors too. NSE turnover at 2-year low. People are not exiting their positions. Indian investments in global equities, meanwhile, are rising at $1.6 billion in Jan to September. Indians are not just investing at home, but record sums even in global stock markets. This is happening through the Gift City play, right? A lot of action when it comes to Indian investments. Clearly, Indian equities need a boost of some sort, right? And that will only happen after the trade deal. So as the trade deal, the US trade deal happens, you're going to see some positive action when it comes to Indian equities, and that will be amazing. So hold that thought. How much time it's going to take? I guess it's going to be over by January mid, and that's when it's going to. And February, you get the budget. In February's budget, you get renewed interest in defense and everything, right? The budget increments and so on and so forth. So the future is bright, folks. Just look at it. Moving on. Unless everything falls apart in the world of AI, right? In fact, Indian economy, by the way, is a hedge against AI. So there's no participation of the AI bubble when it comes to Indian stocks, right? Indian indices are essentially a hedge against AI bubble, which is very nice. So even if the world economy falls apart, there's gonna be ripples of that hurting India, but not so much. Moving on. I love this flask thing, right? Keeps the water warm. I love it. Absolutely love it. How are you enjoying the final few sips, folks? It's 194th episode. We're going to be ending on 201, 201. Not a lot of episodes remaining, right? I hope you're enjoying your simultaneous sips. Such a beautiful tradition, which will unfortunately come to an end. Moving on, folks. Scheme to ease MFI, microfinance stress on cards, right? Microfinance sector is getting hurt. Of course, if you've been following, you would know Madam Padma Reddy, the founder of Spandan Murthy, and now Kirtana. She was a pioneer essentially in the world of microfinance, but that is out. She said microfinance sector has systemic issues which are very, very hard to deal with, and the same set of borrowers are getting targeted time and again by different people, and that is not good news. And now what she's done is she started doing the gold loan play, right? And her gold loan portfolio is at something around 3,000 to 4,000 crores. As soon as the AUM goes 5,000 crores, she's going to be going public, which is amazing. But till then, right, whatever happens to the MFI is a bit of a trouble. Credit guarantee scheme is what finance ministry is trying out. It would encourage banks to lend to MFIs. So that's something that the country is thinking about when it comes to solving the MFI delinquency crisis, right? Serious problems. Let's move on, folks. Bondi Beach shooter. That asshole turned out to be an Indian. God damn it. It's going to be even more difficult for Indians to get visas and all now. Visas. Because of this. There's going to be some ripple effect of this, of course. But for now, things are very, very weird. Rest in peace, the victims of the attack. Let's move on, folks. Not going to discuss politics, of course, as always. Exports to US up 11.4% during April to November. So exports not slowing down. Electronics grow fastest, marine products and engineering goods follow. So electronics have not been sanctioned as yet. They have not been tariffed. However, marine foods have been tariffed. The marine, like the seafood and so on, fishes and so on, they have gotten a lot of tariffs. They are like a $10 billion export segment, right? And they have gotten tariffed. Despite the tariffs, they are growing, right? 11.4% up. US electronics exports more than doubled to $13.8 billion. Marine products see demand from China, Vietnam, Russia, and Belgium, right? Exports to China rose 33%, gains recorded in UAE. So if you remember, that's what the government was trying to do when it came to the tariff situation. Tariffs to US, what do? You diversify your export markets. And as you diversify, you're going to be happy. Somebody asks, what is the real issue with the microfinance sector on LinkedIn? So I am not seeing the name, but what happens is when it comes to microfinance, right? Mr. Vaibhav Vijay asks the question. So I'll tell you, microfinance is seeing a limited borrower base getting targeted time and again, and that borrower base has a problem repaying the loan. So there's a stressed assets issue when it comes to microfinance. Stressed assets leads to higher provisioning, which leads to bad debts. When those bad debts accumulate, the banking gets in trouble. That's exactly what's happening. So there's lack of depth in the market, right? Because the people who can pay back those loans are limited, and they are getting targeted time and again. So I hope I explained myself without repeating myself, right? That is what's going on, and they targeted those things quite a lot. So microfinance was a heavy focus area for a very long time, and as that happened, right, it led to some systemic shocks and cracks in the play. So that's what's happening. We were talking about exports, electronics exports. Yeah, so we were looking at November exports to US rose 22% on year, 6.98 billion. This is faster than 19.5% in India's total outbound shipments. So that's what's happening. China rose $12 billion, and India has been able to, in a way, diversify, which is very necessary because India is draining a lot of forex due to the falling rupee. Right? Exports are gonna help. So maybe the exports have grown or are growing because of the falling rupee, right? Because that's what's happened. That's what happens when your currency gets devalued, right? Your exports become more competitive. When your exports become more competitive, they get lapped up more, right? You get more orders, right? Because if let's say 80 rupees to a dollar versus 90 rupees to a dollar, it's gonna be cheaper for an American to buy whatever you're selling, right? So he's gonna buy more. So that sort of helps. That's how China ruled the world trade essentially. It just kept devaluing its currency so much that everybody else was left uncompetitive. That was one of the biggest sells of Donald Trump, right? He said devaluation is the biggest problem. So he basically in that frame came along. Moving on, folks. You know what they've done? They've changed the Manrega scheme name to VBG Ramji scheme. VBG Ramji. Manrega is now VBG Ramji, and that is causing a firestorm. But they've done some changes. Employment guarantee for 125 days per fiscal year. Employment guarantee for 100 days in most cases. And a lot of those changes, we're not going to discuss them. But that is what's happening. Manrega will now be VBG Ramji. Is that funny to you guys? It definitely cracked me up. Marine exports grow 20% up. We talked about it. Why did they change Manrega? 20 years old law. The rural priorities have changed. Stronger social protection, connectivity, digital push, and so on and so forth. Let's move on. Smartphone exports have also surged to $13 billion. Right? Good day for exports. Moving on. There aren't many balls left for GeoStar to make the runs. Broadcasting is making losses on ICC's 4-year media rights it bought for $3 billion. So GeoStar had acquired ICC's $3 billion. There's a question by Mr. William Davis. You mentioned that you have a full-time job. It's a proper corporate job, or you were talking about the business? Well, I'm a startup guy. I meant my startup, running my startup, right? That's what I meant. I'm not employed, right? So I have a company. I go to the office, work with my people, right? That's what I meant, Mr. William Davis. So there aren't many balls left to play. GeoStar acquired ICC rights for $3 billion, the 4-year media rights, right? With RMG going out of the window, real money gaming, that going out of the window, and in nutshell, this particular thing not playing out, even though there's a lot of viewership. Advertising rights were targeted at 4,000 crores in revenue, and they got about 2,000 crores. So they basically missed the mark so badly that they're losing money. They're hemorrhaging cash in this particular deal. A way to sustain this would be to extend the particular timeline for this. If it was a 4-year contract, let's make it 5 years, so 6 years, right? So if it gets extended, the net cost per year sort of gets tapered down. That's what they're hoping for, but not really happening. So a lot of problems for GeoStar. We've talked about this. Whoever has taken this ICC's deal, by the way, They've gotten buried. They've gotten buried, folks. So surprising, right? So, $3 billion deals remain stretched. Under the 4-year agreement, GeoStar is expected to pay $750 million in 2026, or 25% of the deal, and they won't be able to. I mean, it's going to be very difficult. Ad revenue from ICC Champions Trophy and ICC T20 World Cup clocked over 2,000 crore when their target was 4,000 crore. That's how bad it was. So now they're looking at extending it. DTH base is of course dying down, which is leading to a bit of an issue. DTH is direct to home. We've talked about how the TV industry is falling off the cliff, right? 150 million in 2015 to 75 million in 2030, right? 15 years, it's going to be half. Some numbers that they've said, private DTH subscriber, it's a subset, it's fallen from 72 million in FY19 to 62 million in FY24. So very, very big problems when it comes to this particular industry. The extension of the timeline to 2029 could be a bit of an issue. It's a legal thing. So that's what's happening, right? We've talked about this. You know what happened, folks? Prestige, the developer, they were trying to do a Lutyens development project. So Lutyens, what they were trying to do is that they bought a 5,000 square yard plot at Lutyens area, and they wanted to create an apartment complex. You know why? What happened then? Nothing happened. I mean, they didn't get the approvals. They didn't get the approvals for anything. They couldn't make the apartments in that Lutyens 5,000 yard compound. No approvals, no there and that. Why? You know why? Because if that is allowed, the entire Lutyens area will be totally screwed, right? It'll be everywhere. It'll be like every place else. People will start buying up lands and start selling apartments, and the prestige of that area will die. And you know what's very important for politicians and babus, right? Prestige. So they preserved it. So Prestige has essentially, the developer's name is also Prestige, right? So as Lutyens guys preserve their prestige, the Prestige developers sold that plot of land and have moved to Gurgaon. That's where they'll make these shitty apartments, right? For poor people amongst the richest of the country living at Lutyens. They won't have permitted it, and that's what happened. That kind of vigilance is usually necessary everywhere, right? So that people don't do bad construction, which is so entrenched in Delhi and everywhere in the country. Bad construction, illegal construction, they get approved, babus take money, and people make all sorts of stuff. They extend their houses every way, so they create more stories. They get approvals, right? Because they get paid. Everybody is corrupt. But that kind of corruption doesn't stand in Lutyens, because that's where these rich people themselves live. How pathetic is that, folks? Corruption for all. That's what I ask. Let's have corruption for all, right? I wish Prestige ended up paying the Babu who was responsible for granting the approvals, and then they would have made apartments, right? That would have been awesome. It would have been lovely. Moving on, folks. That talks about poor air quality. We're not going to discuss that. You know what happened with silver? We talked about silver. Second order effects, man. So beautiful. Second order effects are always most beautiful to see and observe, right? Silver prices came up, right? Silver prices grew up. They really zoomed. And what happened? The mithai, the edible silver, which goes over kaju, katli and so on and so forth, that sort of took a beating. So the mithai makers, the sweet producers, they've stopped using, or they've reduced their use of silver as a topping for their, sweets. And they're using saffron instead. How interesting is that? Second, the world runs on second order effects, right? That's the beauty of it. And the beauty is that not many people understand this. People just look at events in a silo. They don't understand that, this is going to lead to this effect. Like when COVID happened, right? One of the most interesting second order effects that I saw was that there was gang war started happening amongst monkeys in Indonesia, because tourists used to come, they used to feed everybody, monkeys used to be happy. But then, when tourists stopped coming because of COVID, right, monkeys didn't get food and they essentially started fighting. That's the kind of things that shape the world. Unfortunately, we don't see that, right? Prices of sweets have been raised by 5 to 10% after Diwali festival season because of this particular play, right? Silver has rallied from 86 to 1.2 lakh. Edible silver has also doubled. The rich would rather live in second homes. Well, no surprise there. They're talking about how they're dealing with metropolitans' pollution troubles, right? Second homes, very necessary. JSW Energy setting up a wind turbine blade unit in Karnataka and Gujarat, Sajjan Jindal Group, to make turbine generators for Chinese partner Sany Renewables too. So that's what's happening. Google has also worked with Renew Pact for the green credit. That's okay. You know what? The wind energy is not a great idea. It's not a great idea at all. Number one, it's extremely Chinese dependent. So the whole part, when they say they're gonna set up a blade unit, they're not making anything, right? They're essentially gonna import stuff and then gonna assemble it. That's the problem. Most of the core components come from China, right? It's unreliable and it also kills the real estate. So whenever you set up a wind farm anywhere, the real estate is done because of a lot of problems that it causes, and also it kills the birds. So it's not good for the whole migratory route of the birds and birds' health, because they start. It's basically a lethal killer of birds on steroids. So that's a very big problem. And then it also doesn't really, it's not a very cheap way of doing things, because the cost of making that particular thing, it is not even recovered with the whole lifetime of that energy generation. So it's not a very cost effective way of generating energy either. So wind is total bullshit. And you know what? Who taught me that? Donald Trump. And I agree with his analysis. So I read after he said everything, what I told you. And then I found out the whole economics of wind energy, and they don't work out. They don't work out. Moving on, folks. But in a push to do the renewable thing, it catches up because of carbon credits and climate change and so on and so forth. Whatever they've been targeting. Moving on, folks. General Catalyst, US-based fund, ramping up investments in manufacturing and AI. India's CEO exploring partnerships with large domestic corporates. That's okay. Nationwide crackdown on adulterated paneer. Did you know paneer? We've talked about this. Analogous paneer is a big issue, and a lot of factories were getting demolished in UP with supplied adulterated paneer. Apparently, regulators have woken up to the national health hazard, and they started asking states to take strict actions. Violators may face cancellation of license, right? That's what they're trying to do when it comes to adulterated paneer. Do you think it's going to be enforced properly? Or do you think those people who manufacture, who've always been hand in glove with the authorities, they're going to just pay back these people, and it's going to be business as usual? What do you think is going to happen? Huh? My guess is your guess. And we know what's going to happen, right? Moving on, folks. There's a lot of news about Mr. Bhavesh Agrawal selling out his stake, right? To reduce promoter pledge. He says promoter pledge overhang is a bit of an issue. And my selling of this particular stake to pay the debt against the stock, right? It's going to be important because the company doesn't need to be drawn down by promoter pledge issue. Well, whatever happens, Ola Electric is toast. exactly as predicted. And it didn't take a rocket scientist to predict Ola Electric's fall, right? If you remember the early days of Ola Electric, we're making this big factory. It's gonna be a woman only factory, Nari Shakti. And I'm like, who gives a shit whether these scooties are made by women, right? Do I give a shit that my scooty is made by women, right? I just want that scooty to work and not burn my ass, right? Or I just don't want the folk to go out and make my face into into a mold, right? That's what I want. I don't give a shit about factory employing only women's. And why would you only employ women, man? I mean, it helps to have men, right? I would like a job. So why? What is with this women only thing, right? It's basically, it was all PR. It was all money thrown at a problem, and it happened. So I wrote my first analysis on Ola back in 2019, 20, right? Somewhere around that time, when I said that the cab aggregation market won't work out. In 2021, he came out with the scooty business, which was very clearly a disaster fire from the beginning, right? And now it is what it is. Stocks at the low. Let's see what happens. Moving on, folks. India set for real GDP growth, 7.5%. We've talked about this. Individual underwriting at core of Kotak's microfinance reset. Bank gradually built its microfinance book, which has halved. So this is again in continuation to our story. Moving on, folks. RBI has done a swap, a currency swap, USD INR swap, and it was a $5 billion swap. It got $10 billion bid, and that swap has happened. You know what? How that swap happens? So RBI essentially buys dollar, sells rupees, and then it has to return the particular dollars back, right? Why is this done? To essentially accelerate the transmission of rates to the actual market, because the transmission of rates to the actual market depends on the liquidity in the system, and this is a way to add liquidity in the system, because rupees are supplied, right? It also held a VRR, variable repo rate auction, right? That was again a $10 billion auction, I guess. Yeah, 49,000 crores. 49,000 crores VRR, and 77,000 crore VRR auction, which was a 10-day auction. So a lot of liquidity supply so that that particular play goes out. So you've got to pay back the swap in 3 years. That's the whole play, which is a bad deal because rupee falls at 5% every year, but you got to do what you got to do. Moving on, folks. Oil falls below 60, lowest since May. Oil goes down. It's very good news for India because import bills are going to go down. Import bills going down is great news because our forex gets drained because of growing imports. And when that happens, when oil goes down, the GDP gets a breather, right? Because you know why. Moving on, folks. Headline inflation will not rise to a level given the economic slack. The economy can sustain above trend growth for a few years. Well, that's okay. Thank you. Yeah, let's move on, folks. Donald Trump is suing BBC for $10 billion. Why? Because they edited his January 6th speech where he said, peacefully, go peacefully, do not do this, and so on. So they edited it like he was inciting violence. And while they were doing it, they also deleted his Twitter account, their speeches, his YouTube, his Facebook, everything. So that's what they did. Now he's coming back for their ass, right? $10 billion lawsuit. BBC says that they're going to defend, but they're not going to do that. Everybody's going to lose. They all will have to settle, right? ABC, the 60 Minutes guys, that tweaked Kamala Harris's interview and made her sound a little more intelligent. They essentially had to pay for the Trump ballroom in the White House, right, as a part of the settlement. So all of these people's asses will be handed to them. That is called, you know what's called, what that's called, folks? It's called retribution. Moving on. Here's another bullshit report for you guys. Only a fraction of glaciers will remain by the end of century. So these people have done a 70-year analysis. The study, right? Who has done this study? A study showed on Monday. They didn't say who created this study, but they've done a 70% study led by glaciologist Vander van Tricht, right? They examined satellite data and they figured out that in 70 years, only a fraction of glaciers will remain, right? Wait until you find the climate models. They've been the biggest hoax perpetrated on humankind. These people didn't know shit, and they were knowingly peddling lies to further their, monetary goals, or this just like biggest fraud ever put on people, which essentially killed European economy, which handed the world over to China, killed US economy, killed the world economy, killed manufacturing, and all of those people, hurt those people's livelihoods, people who were working in factories. They left them jobless, right? Asked them to learn to code because of climate goals and all of those climate models. They were utter and absolute lies, right? This one included. Now they're pivoting. They're trying to pivot. We've talked about this, but some of them are still holding on to it. I've written a post about it recently. Moving on, folks. EU set to scrap the 2035 petrol and diesel car ban, which is exactly in sync with what I'm talking about. So all of those bans that they did, right? Madam Angela Merkel, who ruined Germany and Europe, right? The Europeans are going to be banning ICE engines and so on. Why? Because they're putting on the whole play with the EVs. EVs have sort of tapered down, and the climate goals and climate models have turned out to be lies. And they're like, push off, right? Back off, guys. We need to save our industry. Because if the cars go down, Europe doesn't stand. Germany's economy stands on automobile sector, right? If it goes down, they go down. Let's see what happens. There's a very big interview of Mr. Martin Sorrell. He's the founder of WPP, a very big ad agency. And he's talking about how ad agency as a business is changing. We've talked about that in depth in one of the episodes of Thinker's Frequency, so I'm not going to repeat myself. And with that, we come to the end of the 194th episode of Thinker's Frequency. Our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis that only to paralysis right before we punch in. It's 9:30, 9:29. We're gonna punch in anytime soon. I wish you a beautiful day personally and professionally. I'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time, hopefully. Please take care. Have a beautiful day. And I should thank Mr. William Davis, Mr. Sumanth Kumar for being a patron, Mr. Pulkit Mittal, Mr. Barun Sharma for being a patron again, Mr. Cloning Investing, and everybody else who joined, right? Who else was there? Mr. Vaibhav Vijay, Mr. Dipan Dasgupta, good morning, sir. Good morning to you, Mr. Dasgupta. Have a nice day, folks. I'm enjoying my way of talking has become so much more refined because of Thinker's Frequency. I talk much more fluently than before. I'm not Tucker Carlson yet, right? But I'm definitely better. And that's great. All thanks to you. So cheers. Bye-bye, folks.